the new god of healing, the new gods of healing, the new god of healing, the new goddess of healing, the new goddesses of healing, the new goddess of healing, the old god of healing, the old gods of healing, the old god of healing, the old goddess of healing, the old goddesses of healing, the old goddess of healing, the greater god of healing, the greater gods of healing, the greater god of healing, the greater goddess of healing, the greater goddesses of healing, the greater goddess of healing, the lesser god of healing, the lesser gods of healing, the lesser god of healing, the lesser goddess of healing, the lesser goddesses of healing, the lesser goddess of healing, the higher god of healing, the higher gods of healing, the higher god of healing, the higher goddess of healing, the higher goddesses of healing, the higher goddess of healing, the lower god of healing, the lower gods of healing, the lower god of healing, the lower goddess of healing, the lower goddesses of healing, the lower goddess of healing, the greater spirit of healing, the greater spirits of healing, the greater spirit of healing, the lesser spirit of healing, the lesser spirits of healing, the lesser spirit of healing, the higher spirit of healing, the higher spirits of healing, the higher spirit of healing, the lower spirit of healing, the lower spirits of healing, the lower spirit of healing, the major god of healing, the major gods of healing, the major god of healing, the major goddess of healing, the major goddesses of healing, the major goddess of healing, the minor god of healing, the minor gods of healing, the minor god of healing, the minor goddess of healing, the minor goddesses of healing, the minor goddess of healing, the superior god of healing, the superior gods of healing, the superior god of healing, the superior goddess of healing, the superior goddesses of healing, the superior goddess of healing, the inferior god of healing, the inferior gods of healing, the inferior god of healing, the inferior goddess of healing, the inferior goddesses of healing, the inferior goddess of healing, the ancestor god of healing, the ancestor gods of healing, the ancestor god of healing, the ancestor goddess of healing, the ancestor goddesses of healing, the ancestor goddess of healing, the ascendant god of healing, the ascendant gods of healing, the ascendant god of healing, the ascendant goddess of healing, the ascendant goddesses of healing, the ascendant goddess of healing, the descendant god of healing, the descendant gods of healing, the descendant god of healing, the descendant goddess of healing, the descendant goddesses of healing, the descendant goddess of healing, the transcendent god of healing, the transcendent gods of healing, the transcendent god of healing, the transcendent goddess of healing, the transcendent goddesses of healing, the transcendent goddess of healing, the past god of healing, the past gods of healing, the past god of healing, the past goddess of healing, the past goddesses of healing, the past goddess of healing, the present god of healing, the present gods of healing, the present god of healing, the present goddess of healing, the present goddesses of healing, the present goddess of healing, the future god of healing, the future gods of healing, the future god of healing, the future goddess of healing, the future goddesses of healing, the future goddess of healing, the authentic god of healing, the authentic gods of healing, the authentic god of healing, the authentic goddess of healing, the authentic goddesses of healing, the authentic goddess of healing, the synthetic god of healing, the synthetic gods of healing, the synthetic god of healing, the synthetic goddess of healing, the synthetic goddesses of healing, the synthetic goddess of healing, the progressive god of healing, the progressive gods of healing, the progressive god of healing, the progressive goddess of healing, the progressive goddesses of healing, the progressive goddess of healing, the regressive god of healing, the regressive gods of healing, the regressive god of healing, the regressive goddess of healing, the regressive goddesses of healing, the regressive goddess of healing, the ordinary god of healing, the ordinary gods of healing, the ordinary God of healing, the ordinary goddess of healing, the ordinary goddesses of healing, the ordinary goddess of healing, the extraordinary God of healing, the extraordinary gods of healing, the extraordinary God of healing, the extraordinary goddess of healing, the extraordinary goddesses of healing, the extraordinary goddess of healing, the static God of healing, the static gods of healing, the static God of healing, the static goddess of healing, the static goddesses of healing, the static goddess of healing, the dynamic God of healing, the dynamic gods of healing, the dynamic God of healing, the dynamic goddess of healing, the dynamic goddesses of healing, the dynamic goddess of healing, the land God of healing, the land gods of healing, the land God of healing, the land goddess of healing, the land goddesses of healing, the land goddess of healing, the sea God of healing, the sea gods of healing, the sea God of healing, the sea goddess of healing, the sea goddesses of healing, the sea goddess of healing, the sky God of healing, the sky gods of healing, the sky God of healing, the sky goddess of healing, the sky goddesses of healing, the sky goddess of healing, the God of healing, the gods of healing, the God of healing, the goddess of healing, the goddesses of healing, the goddess of healing, the half God of healing, the half gods of healing, the half God of healing, the half goddess of healing, the half goddesses of healing, the half goddess of healing, the vessel of healing, the vessels of healing, the vessel of healing, the name of healing, the names of healing, the name of healing, the person of healing, the persons of healing, the person of healing, the persona of healing, the personas of healing, the persona of healing, the personage of healing, the personages of healing, the personage of healing, the personality of healing, the personalities of healing, the personality of healing, the personification of healing, the personifications of healing, the personification of healing, the image of healing, the images of healing, the image of healing, the imagination of healing, the imaginations of healing, the imagination of healing, the belief of healing, the beliefs of healing, the belief of healing, the thought of healing, the thoughts of healing, the thought of healing, the word of healing, the words of healing, the word of healing, the action of healing, the actions of healing, the action of healing, the reaction of healing, the reactions of healing, the reaction of healing, the feeling of healing, the feelings of healing, the feeling of healing, the situation of healing, the situations of healing, the situation of healing, the circumstance of healing, the circumstances of healing, the circumstance of healing, the environment of healing, the environments of healing, the environment of healing, the relationship of healing, the relationships of healing, the relationship of healing, the number of healing, the numbers of healing, the number of healing, the formula of healing, the formulas of healing, the formula of healing, the equation of healing, the equations of healing, the equation of healing, the theory of healing, the theories of healing, the theory of healing, the symbol of healing, the symbols of healing, the symbol of healing, the color of healing, the colors of healing, the color of healing, the thing of healing, the things of healing, the thing of healing, the way of healing, the ways of healing, the way of healing, the place of healing, the places of healing, the place of healing, the time of healing, the times of healing, the time of healing, the event of healing, the events of healing, the event of healing, the result of healing, the results of healing, the result of healing, the crown of healing, the crowns of healing, the crown of healing, the throne of healing, the thrones of healing, the throne of healing, the healing king, the healing kings, the healing kingdom, the healing kingdoms, the healing king's subject, the healing king's subjects, the healing king's dominion, the healing king's dominions, the kingdom of healing, The kingdoms of healing. The kingdom of healing. The healing queen. The healing queens. The healing queendom. The healing queendoms. The healing queen's subject. The healing queen's subjects. The healing queen's dominion. The healing queen's dominions. The queendom of healing. The queendoms of healing. The queendom of healing. The healing prince. The healing princes. The healing princedom. The healing princedoms. The healing prince's subject. The healing prince's subjects. The healing prince's dominion. The healing prince's dominions. The princedom of healing. The princedoms of healing. The princedom of healing. The healing princess. The healing princesses. The healing princessdom. The healing princessdoms. The healing princess's subject. The healing princess's subjects. The healing princess's dominion. The healing princess's dominions. The princessdom of healing. The princessdoms of healing. The princessdom of healing. The Lord of healing. The lords of healing. The Lord of healing. The lordess of healing. The lordesses of healing. The lordess of healing. The priest of healing. The priests of healing. The priest of healing. The priestess of healing. The priestesses of healing. The priestess of healing. The ritual of healing. The rituals of healing. The ritual of healing. The shrine of healing. The shrines of healing. The shrine of healing. The temple of healing. The temples of healing. The temple of healing. The leader of healing. The leaders of healing. The leader of healing. The follower of healing. The followers of healing. The follower of healing. The natural substance of healing. The natural substances of healing. The natural substance of healing. The supernatural substance of healing. The supernatural substances of healing. The supernatural substance of healing. The temporal substance of healing. The temporal substances of healing. The temporal substance of healing. The spiritual substance of healing. The spiritual substances of healing. The spiritual substance of healing. The natural form of healing. The natural forms of healing. The natural form of healing. The supernatural form of healing. The supernatural forms of healing. The supernatural form of healing. The temporal form of healing. The temporal forms of healing. The temporal form of healing. The spiritual form of healing. The spiritual forms of healing. The spiritual form of healing. The age of healing. The ages of healing. The age of healing. The era of healing. The eras of healing. The era of healing. The awakener of healing. The awakeners of healing. The awakener of healing. The awakening of healing. The awakenings of healing. The awakening of healing. The realm of healing. The realms of healing. The realm of healing. The dimension of healing. The dimensions of healing. The dimension of healing. The zone of healing. The zones of healing. The zone of healing. The frequency of healing. The frequencies of healing. The frequency of healing. The century of healing. The centuries of healing. The century of healing. The millennium of healing. The millenniums of healing. The millennium of healing. The purpose of healing. The purposes of healing. The purpose of healing. The meaning of healing. The meanings of healing. The meaning of healing. The culture of healing. The cultures of healing. The culture of healing. The demonstrator of healing. The demonstrators of healing. The demonstrator of healing. The demonstration of healing. The demonstrations of healing. The demonstration of healing. The manifester of healing. The manifestors of healing. The manifester of healing. The manifestation of healing. The manifestations of healing. The manifestation of healing. The presence of healing. The presences of healing. The presence of healing. The glow of healing. The glows of healing. The glow of healing. The goal of healing. The goals of healing. The goal of healing. The plan of healing. The plans of healing. The plan of healing. The book of healing. The books of healing. The book of healing. The philosopher of healing. The philosophers of healing. The philosopher of healing. The philosophy of healing. The philosophies of healing. The philosophy of healing. The releaser of healing. The releasers of healing. The releaser of healing. The release of healing. The releases of healing. The release of healing. The variable of healing. The variables of healing. The variable of healing. The cause of healing. The causes of healing. The cause of healing. The effect of healing. The effects of healing. The effect of healing. The journey of healing. The journeys of healing. The journey of healing. The emergence of healing. The emergences of healing. The emergence of healing. The source of healing. The sources of healing. The source of healing. The originator of healing. The originators of healing. The originator of healing. The origin of healing. The origins of healing. The origin of healing. The forefather of healing. The forefathers of healing. The forefather of healing. The foremother of healing. The foremothers of healing. The foremother of healing. The ancestor of healing. The ancestors of healing. The ancestor of healing. The descendant of healing. The descendants of healing. The descendant of healing. The lineage of healing. The lineages of healing. The lineage of healing. The heritage of healing. The heritages of healing. The heritage of healing. The heir of healing. The heirs of healing. The heir of healing. The co-heir of healing. The co-heirs of healing. The co-heir of healing. The joint heir of healing. The joint heirs of healing. The joint heir of healing. The dynasty of healing. The dynasties of healing. The dynasty of healing. The force of healing. The forces of healing. The force of healing. The law of healing. The laws of healing. The law of healing. The pact of healing. The pacts of healing. The pact of healing. The game of healing. The games of healing. The game of healing. The mask of healing. The masks of healing. The mask of healing. The armor of healing. The armors of healing. The armor of healing. The sword of healing. The swords of healing. The sword of healing. The shield of healing. The shields of healing. The shield of healing. The force shield of healing. The force shields of healing. The force shield of healing. The armored force shield of healing. The armored force shields of healing. The armored force shield of healing. The champion of healing. The champions of healing. The champion of healing. The guardian of healing. The guardians of healing. The guardian of healing. The defender of healing. The defenders of healing. The defender of healing. The protector of healing. The protectors of healing. The protector of healing. The chant of healing. The chants of healing. The chant of healing. The shape of healing. The shapes of healing. The shape of healing. The cube of healing. The cubes of healing. The cube of healing. The cuboid of healing. The cuboids of healing. The cuboid of healing. The sphere of healing. The spheres of healing. The sphere of healing. The spheroid of healing. The spheroids of healing. The spheroid of healing. The prism of healing. The prisms of healing. The prism of healing. The pyramid of healing. The pyramids of healing. The pyramid of healing. The cylinder of healing. The cylinders of healing. The cylinder of healing. The cone of healing. The cones of healing. The cone of healing. The triangle of healing. The triangles of healing. The triangle of healing. The circle of healing. The circles of healing. The circle of healing. The semicircle of healing. The semicircles of healing. The semicircle of healing. The square of healing. The squares of healing. The square of healing. The rectangle of healing. The rectangles of healing. The rectangle of healing. The parallelogram of healing. The parallelograms of healing. The parallelogram of healing. The rhombus of healing. The rhombuses of healing. The rhombus of healing. The trapezoid of healing. The trapezoids of healing. The trapezoid of healing. The polygon of healing. The polygons of healing. The polygon of healing. The pentagon of healing. The pentagons of healing. The pentagon of healing. The hexagon of healing. The hexagons of healing. the hexagon of healing, the septagon of healing, the septagons of healing, the septagon of healing, the octagon of healing, the octagons of healing, the octagon of healing, the nonagon of healing, the nonagons of healing, the nonagon of healing, the decagon of healing, the decagons of healing, the decagon of healing, the evolution of healing, the evolutions of healing, the evolution of healing, the revolution of healing, the revolutions of healing, the revolution of healing, the elemental art of healing, the elemental arts of healing, the elemental art of healing, the elemental science of healing, the elemental sciences of healing, the elemental science of healing, the elemental principle of healing, the elemental principles of healing, the elemental principle of healing, the elemental technology of healing, the elemental technologies of healing, the elemental technology of healing, the low elemental art of healing, the low elemental arts of healing, the low elemental art of healing, the low elemental science of healing, the low elemental sciences of healing, the low elemental science of healing, the low elemental principle of healing, the low elemental principles of healing, the low elemental principle of healing, the low elemental technology of healing, the low elemental technologies of healing, the low elemental technology of healing, the high elemental art of healing, the high elemental arts of healing, the high elemental art of healing, the high elemental science of healing, the high elemental sciences of healing, the high elemental science of healing, the high elemental principle of healing, the high elemental principles of healing, the high elemental principle of healing, the high elemental technology of healing, the high elemental technologies of healing, the high elemental technology of healing, the agent of healing, the agents of healing, the agent of healing, the agency of healing, the agencies of healing, the agency of healing, the amplifier of healing, the amplifiers of healing, the amplifier of healing, the amplification of healing, the amplifications of healing, the amplification of healing, the enhancer of healing, the enhancers of healing, the enhancer of healing, the enhancement of healing, the enhancements of healing, the enhancement of healing, the magnifier of healing, the magnifiers of healing, the magnifier of healing, the magnification of healing, the magnifications of healing, the magnification of healing, the influencer of healing, the influencers of healing, the influencer of healing, the influence of healing, the influences of healing, the influence of healing, the emanator of healing, the emanators of healing, the emanator of healing, the emanation of healing, the emanations of healing, the emanation of healing, the converger of healing, the convergers of healing, the converger of healing, the convergence of healing, the convergences of healing, the convergence of healing, the aura of healing, the auras of healing, the aura of healing, the impression of healing, the impressions of healing, the impression of healing, the intelligence of healing, the intelligences of healing, the intelligence of healing, the sophistication of healing, the sophistications of healing, the sophistication of healing, the genius of healing, the geniuses of healing, the genius of healing, the polymath of healing, the polymaths of healing, the polymath of healing, the psychic of healing, the psychics of healing, the psychic of healing, the knowledge of healing, the knowledges of healing, the knowledge of healing, the understanding of healing, the understandings of healing, the understanding of healing, the wisdom of healing, the wisdoms of healing, the wisdom of healing, the secret of healing, the secrets of healing, the secret of healing, the mystery of healing, the mysteries of healing, the mystery of healing, the revelation of healing, the revelations of healing, the revelation of healing, the tactic of healing, the tactics of healing, the tactic of healing, the strategy of healing, the strategies of healing, the strategy of healing, the strength of healing, the strengths of healing, the strength of healing, the might of healing, the might of healing, the might of healing, the power of healing, the powers of healing, the power of healing, the authority of healing, the authorities of healing, the authority of healing, the dominion of healing, the dominions of healing, the dominion of healing, the rhythm of healing, the rhythms of healing, the rhythm of healing, the melody of healing, the melodies of healing, the melody of healing, the music of healing, the musics of healing, the music of healing, the lyric of healing, the lyrics of healing, the lyric of healing, the song of healing, the songs of healing, the song of healing, the dance of healing, the dances of healing, the dance of healing, the spirit of healing, the spirits of healing, the spirit of healing, the soul of healing, the souls of healing, the soul of healing, the body of healing, the bodies of healing, the body of healing, the mark of healing, the marks of healing, the mark of healing, the promise of healing, the promises of healing, the promise of healing, the visionary of healing, the visionaries of healing, the visionary of healing, the vision of healing, the visions of healing, the vision of healing, the picture of healing, the pictures of healing, the picture of healing, the sound of healing, the sounds of healing, the sound of healing, the tongue of healing, the tongues of healing, the tongue of healing, the language of healing, the languages of healing, the language of healing, the communication of healing, the communications of healing, the communication of healing, the people of healing, the peoples of healing, the people of healing, the society of healing, the societies of healing, the society of healing, the fortress of healing, the fortresses of healing, the fortress of healing, the government of healing, the governments of healing, the government of healing, the city of healing, the cities of healing, the city of healing, the nation of healing, the nations of healing, the nation of healing, the civilization of healing, the civilizations of healing, the civilization of healing, the world of healing, the worlds of healing, the world of healing,